I watch your podcast, as you probably already know, and my youngest son is named after Brother Minister Abdul Qadir Muhammad. So my youngest son is named Qadir, and I watched that particular interview with, such admiration, and I know you got a part 2 coming. Looking forward to that.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this evening. We have our Brother Daamin out of Newark, New Jersey. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
Yes, sir. This is an honor of mine, and on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast, we're very grateful and thankful for you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the People's Podcast, sir.
All praise is due to Allah, brother. It's my pleasure and my honor to be here, and I definitely want to send our greetings from myself and my family, and of course all the believers here in the great city of Newark, New Jersey. On behalf of our student minister Abdul Haq Muhammad, our student captain Brother Tariq Muhammad, and our student secretary that I know you're very familiar with, Brother Rabbi Muhammad.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I want to greet you and your family and thank you and your family for all that you are doing and have done in a sacrifice for our wonderful nation and our people.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Well, the first question we have for you, sir, is when did you hear the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Wow, brother. I'm from a place in Newark, New Jersey, was raised up called an Academy Spires. I don't know if you was able to see our sister Roxanne Shante, the rapper, one of the original female rappers, but she moved to our apartment complex. And I first got into the listening to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan from a tape that she had, that a brother shared with me. My family had been in the nation, my mother in particular, and my aunt, although a Christian, had the 7 speeches and had it on the mantle. So I would always look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in this picture on the 7 speeches cover, and the pictures of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan surrounding him, and would always see that book on the mantle. And actually, I believe I started reading it at 10 years old. But my family had been in the nation prior to when I was born in 1971. My mom had been in the nation for a couple of years and had actually left the nation, I think, after the assassination of Brother Minister James Shabazz.
Yes, sir. Okay, wow. Yes, sir. And Newark has such a rich history, but also one that's like tangled in, prior to 75 now and things of that nature. May I ask who your parents are, sir?
My mother is Jacqueline Durden, as she's known now. And my father, brother, I really just got a relationship with my dad probably within the last 10 years. I had never even seen a picture of my dad, but my father's name is Francis Johnson.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so fast forward, then when do you accept the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
I accepted the teachings in early 1990. Pardon me, brother.
Yes, sir.
In early 1990. I started coming around, I guess, in late 89, but did the full acceptance and stood up and joined the ranks in 1990. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And how did your family and your friends feel about you accepting the teachings?
Oh, brother. I'll start with my friends first. It was, we all went to the mosque together, like my little crew. The brothers was out, we were downtown Newark, and beautiful brother Tony Muhammad, still with us today. Him and his nephew, Brother James, were fishing right on Broad and Market, and me and a couple of my friends. We were out downtown shopping, and he spoke to us, and his nephew spoke to us, who was, closer to my age at that time. And we were just listening to what the brother said, and he invited us out. Then, and I think my first time coming out was late '89, and it was unique because it was actually an FOI class. It was an FOI class, and they were doing martial arts, when we went, but just the discipline and the training that the men was doing attracted me and even a lot of my friends at that time. So we began to, we would go down and listen to Brother Minister Abdul Qadir speak, and maybe I went once or twice within the month, and he was my barber at the same time.
Okay.
Abdul Qadir Muhammad was my barber. I lived on First Street. His barber shop was literally maybe about a block or two away from me. And we would go to the barber shop, and he would be in there, the minister would be on. So my friends, they had stood up as well. Actually, they stood up before me in the meeting when I stood up and accepted the teachings. So they were receptive of it initially, and for, reasons and things, they, didn't follow through. But I remember when I came up and I stood up, Brother Minister Qadir, who had been kind of familiar with me from the neighborhood somewhat, all of them, as they stood up in the acceptance, he shook their hand, and maybe this was in my mind, but this is how I remember it. He shook their hand, and they, moved on. And when he got to me, I was maybe about the seventh male to come up and shake his hand. He held on to my hand. He said, "You ready, brother?" I said, "Yes, sir." I said yes, or whatever I said at the time, and went to try to step off, but it felt like he still had my hand. And he said, "You sure you ready, brother?" At least that's what I have in my mind as a memory, And I was like, man, I was trying to pull away from him because I was like, don't put me on blast, brother, in front of everybody.
Yes, sir.
But my friends were very accepting at that time. My family, my mother, she had knowledge of the teachings, so she was, somewhat familiar, but she had never shared with me her history in the Nation of Islam to that extent. My older sister, she always teased me. She used to say, her name was Antanya 4X. And she said, "I got 4 X's. You just got one," because I was David. So
yes, sir.
I didn't know at the time. So I thought her 4 X's was more than my 1.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but so my family was pretty much accepting. They were just kind of watching me, I guess, to see how it went. And I think Minister Qadir shared the jewel with me early on. He said, we have a lake near us in a park called Branchwood Park. And he said, "Brother, you ever walk out on that lake when it's frozen?" And I said, "Yeah, we played on it and run across it." He said, "Sometimes you run across it and your friends are waiting to see if you're going to make it." He said, "Brother, that's what they may be looking at you right now to see if you're going to make it, And so he shared that drink, and I never forgot that. This was very early on. So yeah, they were mostly acceptance, and my family members as well was accepted.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I'm glad you decided to make that decision.
Me too, brother.
Miriam sends the greetings. Alicia Taylor says, "Praise be to Allah." And people just showing you love. I can't wait to put this on YouTube. Thank you to everyone who likes, shares, and subscribes to the People Podcast. My next question for you, sir, is once you came in the mosque, who trained you? What was that environment like?
Wow. Originally, man, I'm trying to think of who our lieutenant was at the time. I think the trainer at the time was a brother lieutenant by the name of Brother Joe, if I'm not mistaken, Brother Joe. And Brother Joe, I know he did our orientation, and man, this brother, man, he inspired us so much that we had a whole orientation squad. I was one of the brothers I'm with today that was in my orientation squad, Brother Dennis, and we all came in together myself, former captain, Brother Robert, of number 25, and we all actually stood up together and went through orientation together. But we had a squad, brother, maybe about 10 to 13 brothers in orientation, that Brother Joe, man, inspired us so much that we actually was going out and fishing while we was in orientation, and we would just try to duplicate everything we saw the other brothers do. But Brother Joe was the lieutenant, I think, that was training us. At the time, our captain was Captain Theodore. And of course, the great now Captain Majid Muhammad, he was one of the lieutenants at the time. And I remember riding with him in the car, and his, I think he had like a Cutlass Supreme, and he was sharing with me how to always carry something that reminds you of the teachings on you at all times. And he had Message to the Black Man, and he would, he just pulled it out, in the car and was like at the light, reading and going through it with me. Yes, sir. So those were some of my initial trainings early on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Excellent. Praise be to Allah. And what was it that made you go from seeing the Most Honorable Minister Farrakhan, from maybe a public speaker or political activist, to someone who was in fact divinely guided? What was it?
Man, I think it can only be, Allah, who came in the person of Master W. Father Muhammad, and the Mahdi, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that have blessed, us to be able to see, and look at the minister. But, I come up in a time in the 80s where, the music, so Public Enemy was a heavy influence, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, sort of the hip hop music was strong, a strong influence. And just the fruit that were around at that time, was so strong, in our community, that I think that's what really let me see the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in Donahue. We watched the show on Donahue, and the minister was talking about us, fasting and stuff like that. So I remember that was the first year I tried to do the fast of Ramadan, and this was prior to me actually standing up. This is like 88, we tried to do the fast of Ramadan. And, we were doing a couple other things too, but we were striving, we were trying to do the fast of Ramadan. So I guess the climate and the culture at that time really influenced me to be able to see the minister, in a particular light.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My next question for you is, being in Newark, what was it? Has there ever been a time where you were faced with fear? And if so, how have you overcome that fear?
Wow. Yes. The minister teaches us that, fear is natural, right? But to not face our fear is cowardice, right? And so there has been times when I face fear, but it hasn't been what I guess is it hasn't been things like in the streets, because that's something, fear the unknown, and that's something I kind of been around a lot of my life. I did 2 years in prison, and while in there, seeing many things and experienced some things of fear then, but it was the words and the wisdom of the minister of how to face our fear and to overcome it, and to just, the lessons that we have, that allowed me to kind of reflect on and be able to face my fear. Just different words that I've heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan say over the, the time and the years, the different study guides that I've looked at. And I think, just that has allowed me to kind of face and overcome the fear when I've encountered it, at different times. And sometimes it's been things where, it's been a fear of threat to life. And then sometimes it's been a fear just of the power of the enemy. You know, I had a life sentence and I would be in the courtroom trying to, you know, overturn that life sentence through legal things. And, you know, it's just the whole institutionalization of that arena, if you will, right? To go up there and to speak truth to power, you know, so that sometimes it was that type of fear. And then sometimes it was fear things, you know, where individuals didn't like you because you was in the nation, you know, different organizations or religions that were in there, you know, didn't understand. I didn't believe. And sometimes that was the thing. They would try to intimidate us to, you know, but just standing up on that truth that we believe. And then that would, you know, and I would see the fear would just be leaving me once I decided to face and to overcome that fear. Praise be to Allah.
Praise to Allah. Yes, sir. My sister Naima sends the greetings. And we have a lot. Well, now that I know that about the life sentence, we definitely gonna go into that. Yes, sir. Brother Daamin, we have a quick 60-second commercial break for all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast. I want to thank everyone who continues to just anonymous donate. Like every day, the People's Podcast is growing, and it's because of the people. I'm so grateful for all of the people on Facebook, the businesses, the believers from all across the country, just the sympathizers, everybody. Thank you all. If you would like to sponsor, please cash out the People's Podcast. To my brother Rashad, Street Premiere Media Production. He has a 4K camera, a drone. He does television and film editing. Thank you very much. Reach out to me if you need any of that. My sister Miriam, ABC I Love Me Children's and Coloring Book, both of which are available on Amazon. Please go out and get those. My sister Naima, Stay On Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country, right here in the studio in Atlanta, Georgia. We love our tiny dancers. Sister Rashida Rafat, Rock Communications, 5-year anniversary special promo. If you're working on a book and you need content development, media relations, like anything dealing with writing a book, please reach out to Sister Rashida Rafat, Rock Communications. Student Minister Robert L. Muhammad, Conflict Mediation, Squashing the Beef out of Austin, Texas, doing a great job in that Southwest region. His wife, Sister Fudia Muhammad, Children of the Most High, giving birth to a guide in the science of child rearing. Please reach out to her. Brother Kenneth, bow tie maker extraordinaire. He'll ship bow ties to you all anywhere in the country. Also, Sister Sherry Muhammad, Asiatic Minds, teaching your children through school virtually, STEM, and all kind of great curriculum. Kings and Queens, AsiaticMinds.com. We're coming right back to our brother, Dr. Henry M. Carter, King Henry Circulegs, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Rashad Muhammad, COVID-19 disinfecting cleaning services, and my father's book, Soldier in the Movement of Christ, AbdulSharif.com, Down is Not Out is his new book. And last but not least, my 2 books, Cleopatra, which is a children's book, and No Father, No Excuse, both of which are available on Amazon. Thank you all very much. Right back to our brother. Here we go. Okay, so Brother Daamin.
Yes, sir.
Let's get right into it. You said no question was off limits before we went live. How do you face a life sentence? Like, what's going on? What happened?
Oh, brother. Well, I had actually I had been in the nation and did maybe 3 years in prison. I came in the nation when I stood up. I had a case over my head, and let me say that because sometimes I think that folks, you know all this lingo that we use. But I had a criminal charge at the time when I came in the nation. And me and Brother Robert, we were both on trial. There was another brother named Jerome, who's now deceased. And he had told the FOI that, you know, in the after orientation, he said, could he get some support to come to his court? And so, of course, Brother Joe, the lieutenant, instructor of orientation, said, yeah. And then he asked, he said, any other brothers got any charges or anything? So myself and another brother, they raised their hand. And my brother, Brother Eli, former captain, Brother Arthur, and Brother Jesse, they came to my trial. I was on trial, and I was probably in my 2nd week of trial. And I remember going at the break, we went in the bathroom, and it was almost the end of my trial. And Brother Eli and him said, the brother looked like he's gonna get found guilty.
Mm.
He said, well, you gonna go down wrong way, and they start telling me about some of the believers I could get with. I'm saying to myself, you know, I think I was just turning 19. I'm like, go the wrong way. I'm not going to no jail, man. Like, I'm about to leave out this courtroom and keep it moving. You know, and they said, no, brother. And, you know, they was explaining stuff that I don't even remember what they were saying because I probably, you know, I couldn't hear them at the time. And so, but they were, what they were summing up that the brothers that they were going to support. And I know Brother Minister Kadir told me, he said, brother, call me anytime, you know, and at the time, I followed that instruction. I would call the brother 2, 3, sometimes 5, 6 times a day. And the brother would never, like, looking back at it now, I understand, like, those phone calls cost money. You know, the brother busy, you know, he raised in the city and got family and everything. Like, I can't imagine, you know, what that, but the brother was so patient with me and everything. And he would accept my call. And sometimes I just needed to talk to somebody. So that's how I did it, brother. That's how I was able to face the life sentence, depending on Allah and the believers, you know, grooming me and training me. But originally, like I said, it was a 4-year sentence. It was a 12-year sentence with a 4-year mandatory minimum. Then I went to a halfway house, and while I was in the halfway house, you know, I was being active in the mosque, but then, you know, as some of the scriptures talk about, I had begun to look and fall back into the world, you know. So while I was actually in the halfway house, I went out and got into an incident and everything, which gave me a life sentence. Got into a shooting and a robbery and everything, and shootout with law enforcement, and it gave me a life sentence in prison while I was in the halfway house serving the rest of my sentence. And that was the end, basically. And so as I was serving the time, you know, the minister, I was still, you know, reaching out to him and everything. And he would, you know, share wisdom and things with me. And the other brothers that had been down for years and years, they were talking about, remember, they was talking about the believers and sharing, you know, some of their sentiments of how they felt. They wanted more support in the prison, you know, from the believers. And I had, you know, access to call Brother Minister Kadir, and he was sharing with me, and he said, you know, some of y'all brothers come home and y'all, you know, y'all go back right to the same stuff, brother. So you make it harder on the brothers in there. And I knew I had been guilty of that myself. And I went to the brother that was in there, and I apologized to him and shared with the brother because he wasn't understanding because he had never been out. You know, he was just in there. He was looking, but even that, you know, allowed me, because I said, if I get out, I want to be able to do something and help the believers that are on the inside, you know. And so reaching out, our regional prison minister at that time, Abdul Salam Muhammad, from out of number 7, I began to reach out to him. The national, our great national minister, Abdullah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Prison minister. And man, I mean, I was, you know, getting the final call inside because the prison I was in didn't allow us to get audio tapes or anything like that of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan or anybody. And we would get the final call in. And, you know, that was, you know, that was, you know, our saving grace, brother. And the study guides, being able to reflect on the study guides and do self-examination, self-analysis, and self-correction.
Yes, sir.
Is what allowed us to, to be able to do it. And, I wouldn't have been out until I was eligible for parole in 2027. That's when I was eligible to be released at the time. And that's right around the corner, as we say it from inside now. But it was a long, long time away from at the time that the sentence was given to. And so, as fighting for that, and I'll never forget a student minister by the name of, I think his name was Brother Reginald, out of number 10 in Atlantic City, pardon me. I'm trying to come out there with you, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In Atlantic City, Brother Reginald was able to send us Study Guide 19, brother. And that year, with the year, I knew I was getting out because I had read in there, the minister in the part B, 19B, had said, you ask Allah, something that you know that nobody else got the power to do. Because I was guilty of sin of my crime, and I can say that freely. But I asked Allah, I said, I know I'm good. I knew knowing the teachings of having some knowledge, let me say, of the teachings before I went back in. And all the support that I had, I said, man, Allah, if you just give me this, then I know I got to lock down, And sure enough, brother, I just felt it was the last 10 days of Ramadan that they say, the night of power. And I was in lockup in what they call a hold. And I just felt, I can't explain it, but I knew I could feel it. And I didn't want to share it with nobody because I knew, man, yeah, all right, brother. Yeah, I'm getting out too, what I'm saying? And Allah blessed me to, give that sentence back, with the help of many other people, but Allah blessed me to. So it was just the spirit of the believers, the knowledge of the truth that we were learning that got me through the time that we were able to do in there and overcome at that time.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. And so many people showing you love in the comments as well. Please continue to like, share, subscribe to the People's Podcast. Now, Brother Daamin, what advice would you give to young people or people, period, but specifically the young generation who may think that going to prison is cool? Like, what I'm saying? It's like something that you got to do. Like, could you give a story or something kind of like to help scare straight, if you will, some of the people who, could you give us something that you may have seen or experienced that can help them not want to go to prison?
Well, brother, in the 22 years, and I mean, this is the work that I do now. Allah blessed me. So I talk in the organization that I'm in as far as my job. I talk to many, many young people. And what I share with them is that in the 22 years that I've done in prison, the most profound thing I've learned is that everything I learned while I was in there, I could have learned it on the outside. I didn't have to go in there to learn. And so there's nothing, many of our folks look at prison as like a rite of passage, that is some badge of honor because struggle is ordained. We measure ourselves by the struggles that we overcome. And so the enemy has put that out there in a way that this is a struggle that will give you a stripe, a badge in the street for street credibility.
Yes, sir.
But that's not necessarily so, especially now. Once the enemy get his hands and kind of peep it, he take all that away out of it. It's like what our great brother Malcolm X, that he went into jail and he started studying and things like that. So the enemy kind of took those books and things out of the prison and kind of made, and gave you other things to distract you, sport and play in there. Because he didn't want us focusing. We had nothing else to do but focus, so he changed the dynamic. So what they think that they may be able to get out of the prison experience, right, and get that street credibility, they can do that same thing by just standing up in the community and doing something that is right, because that's what's gangster. That's what's real, you know. And so that's what I tell brothers. You don't have to go inside for nothing, man. Talk to your boys inside. Talk to your sisters inside. That don't give nothing, And for those of us that have experience, we like to share what we call a war story,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
because those things of struggle of how we measure ourselves. But we don't share like the flip side of that. The nights that we in there crying, we share how we was thorough, we was making sure nobody wasn't doing nothing to us and this, that, and third. We phone checking the cat or whatever the case may be. But we don't share that after we got off that phone. What we went through, like the psychological things, the dehumanization, the having to read your book of worship, the same place that you have to defecate in, the same place that you got to pray in is where you defecate in. Like, this is dehumanized, and all these things. I don't care what you have. And I told this to a warden. He came and he asked me, and I was in lockup, and at the prison I was in, they didn't have no room for me in the other part of another part of lockup you go to, and I was waiting to go there. They call it ASEG, administrative segregation. And while I was waiting, because of the rules, they had to give me my property, my personal property. So my TV and things like that were in the cell, but I was reading Message to the Black Man. My TV was sitting up on the shelf, and I could like look in the TV and see what's behind me. So the warden was walking by, and he happened to look in there, and I had, we call it, what's the brother who wrote that book? We talk about Prison Plush.
Virginia.
Brother from out of Virginia. I can't think of the name of the book. But anyway, I had to sell, clean and everything, how we need to be. And so the warden said to me, he said, man, called me by my government slave name. He said, look like you living pretty well in here, Mr. Durden.
Mm.
And I didn't even turn around to acknowledge him. I could see him in the reflection of the TV, and I closed Message to the Black Man. I said, Warren, you want me to respond to that? He said, oh, talk freely. So I turned around and I told him, I said, you can give me every amenity that you could think of in here. And I started running off a list of things. Give me any food that I wanted, the big screen TV, anything I wanted to watch, the best of clothes, anything. And I said, I would rather live in a cardboard box in the street with nothing.
Mm.
And what you can give me, like, don't ever say that I'm living in here, So, yeah, it just disgusted me. I forgot the question, but I got caught up in that.
Sir. Yes, sir.
That's what we could say to individuals,
yes, sir.
To let them know, man. And nah, that ain't what it's hitting for, man. Get out here, man, and do something for self and make our communities a decent place to live. That's what we should be doing, Praise be to Allah.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Well, Brother David, once you got out, how did you get away from the life sentence? Was it the court?
Yeah, brother. Allah blessed us. We were looking for something because, as I said, I was, guilty of the crimes, plural, that they had convicted me of. And so I was looking for some type of technicality, something that would give me some relief, some type of way to get out.
Yes, sir.
And Allah brought it, and it was there all the while, from the beginning. This is, one of the meanings of Ar-Rahman, the Beneficent.
Yes, sir.
Is providing a need before we even knew the need was there. And then the Merciful, Rahim, is when we take advantage of that, And so Allah had already provided a way to get out before I even was kind of trying to get out. Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so the lawyer and some other brothers, a wonderful brother who I'm in communication with now, still on the inside, Brother Alonzo Hill. He, would help me with my legal work and understanding of that. And then a lawyer that was a public defender was able to see it, but it was Allah Master Farad Muhammad, man, that guided their minds and their thinking to that, and to be able to see, which I kind of thought, but it was just so blatant, after that. And brother, it was only Allah, that allowed, everything that happened in that courtroom at that time when the sentence was reversed. I had correction officers who in the state of New Jersey is not allowed write letters for me.
Mm.
I had different organizations, NAACP, at the time the student minister of the mosque, Brother Mr. Michael, who's now a student minister in Plainfield, came and represented. And this was like right after 9/11. My lawyer was like, "You sure you want the Muslims to come?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. I'm positive, And we were able to go in there, and they articulated the different things that I have been doing to work on myself. And so even my prosecutor that was in at that time, he was a county prosecutor. He had been moved up since my case to the Attorney General's office, but came back for my case and said that he wouldn't, on behalf of the state, object to the judge taking more time. I mean, this was never heard of.
Mm.
And the thing that allowed me to give the sentence back is a rule in the statute, Rule 2110B, that's on joint application. I remember off the top of my head, on joint application from the defense and the prosecutor asking the court for less time. Now, this don't happen unless a lot of times people working and becoming snitches and stuff like that, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
but they
sir.
can go, my record is open, and Allah's my witness, that nothing like that happened. And my court ruled that both of them would just touch by Allah to say, hey, this is what we recognize that this man is trying to change his life. And they asked the court to relieve me of that life sentence. And that's what was done at that particular time. All praise is due to Allah. Yes, sir.
That's amazing, sir. Will you ever write a book about your experience?
I would love to. I actually had started a memoir in '96 while I was inside, and was starting to work on a book. And even not too long ago, I heard our international representative, student minister Abdul Akbar, say that even if we just write it for our own family to know, my children and things, to look at, to share that. So I'm definitely looking that way. I'll either just share some recordings, just like record some things, like give the history and kind of lay out that whole experience. So my children and stuff can, share that, and have it at least. But I'm definitely interested in doing something like that.
Praise be to Allah. Beautiful, yes, sir. And were you in prison during the Million Man March?
Yes, sir.
What was that like?
Yes. Oh, brother. The day prior to the march, it's a lot, man. Like all the lectures leading up to the march, and the final call, man. The final call, is definitely a godsend, man. And it's for us to be able to receive that inside, and that's brother's lifeline. And so we were following up. I remember this rap, I got 5 on.
Yes, sir.
And
yes,
we were
sir.
trying to send out charity. We were raising some charity for the march, and we was asking all the brothers in the inside, man, just send 5, man. For 5, man, send it out, man. And so I happened to be going back to court at that time, and went to court and was in court the day of the Million Man March. I did not see the Million Man March live. I was in what they call a bullpen, where they hold you in the courtroom to wait to go. And I didn't have court because my co-defendant didn't come, so I knew he wasn't coming, so they was just holding me. But when I got back upstairs, brother, man, I mean the officers, the COs as they call them, the prisoners, everybody, the nurses. I mean, it was just a whole nother aura.
Yes, sir.
You
Yes,
know,
sir.
it was serene, brother. It was like I didn't feel like that, like something could pop off at any time. Like it was amazing, brother. It was amazing, and it touched and allowed us, especially those that were believers, to be able to navigate better, you know, in the inside, because it allowed those to see us in a different light, you know. So it was just magnificent, man. It was magnificent, and I didn't get to watch it till after, but just the effect of it, you know. And I saw clips, you know, of our beloved minister and our beloved Supreme Captain, man. I seen him opening up a clip or two, and that was just enough right there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
That I
sir.
was able to see it. Yes, sir.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Now, what was it like for you coming out of prison and being, you know, reacclimated into society? What was that like?
Brother, that was the shock of the hour. You know, it was a blessing because I had been through the experience that I had been through before. Because I went back to a halfway house, and prior to getting out, and so just, you know, going through all those things, Allah again being the beneficent had kind of prepared me. But what was so different was the streets, because a lot of the street organization and the activity that wasn't at the level that it was when I went inside, that now that had, you know, was like the way of the day, you know, in the city of Newark. And my inside experience gave me great relationships with them as being a member of the Nation of Islam. So I was aware of it, and even had somewhat of an inside line on it. But just now seeing it in its fullness, I guess it would be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Was something, you know. And I made sure I paced myself. I made sure I surrounded myself with the believers, you know, as a protection. And I understood that this was a marathon and not a sprint that I was doing, you know. And all praises due to Allah, we still here doing that wonderful marathon that we on.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Well, Brother Daamin, you're married and have children, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. What advice would you give to future husbands?
Oh man. I would give the advice for us to really study the lectures from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on marriage and family life. Sit down and after us, feeding on that, sit down with our wives and our family and take time to go over. Make time with your family, to go over the teachings and everything, because it's going to bond us, to one another and to the truth, So that's the most important thing, is to really, take some time. I don't care whether it's a half an hour, 20 minutes, whatever time of the day. Me and my wife are now reading Student Minister Nuri's book. After you say I do, we just started reading that book. Just something from the nation to share with your family. And in little increments, man. Cause I know I didn't do that initially, but when I started doing that and we're doing it together, as the minister said, that family is the cornerstone of the nation. So I see that so much. Like, my family is so important,
Yes,
and
sir.
it strengthens me to be able to go out with my bigger family. So I would just say take some time and really study and begin to study the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on the Black woman, married life, and family. Is extremely important.
Be so alive. Wonderful. Yes, sir. What type of music do you listen to, Bro Daamin?
Oh man, I just told I was working earlier, and one of my colleagues asked me that. I said, man, I listen to everything, man.
Yes, sir.
I said we can. I said, what do you listen to? Put it in order. I said we can probably vibe with it. So I found just recently I just got into classical music because of the minister. And so I'm just, when I say recently, maybe within the last year or so, I've been listening to the classical music. But however, man, I listen to all types of music. I try to stay with what has been, because I work in the field, in the streets. And so I try to listen to a lot of the music of that genre to kind of understand, what the brothers and the sisters may be vibing with and they're thinking, at that time. So I do listen to that music as well. But when I'm sitting back, if I have my choice of music, I would sit back and listen to many like the old classics, R&B and things like that. But I listen to all types of music.
Praise be to God. Yes, sir. And what would you like your legacy to be, Brother Daamin?
Oh man, brother, that even after falling down, brother, that we can get back up and do something that is of tremendous something that is really, really good for ourselves and our people. That it's never over. It's never over. That we always got another chance. As long as we got life in us, man, we got a chance. And to be example of that.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. Well, I want to thank you on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast, Brother Daamin, for your sacrifice and the sacrifice of your family, and to keep up the good work. May Allah bless you, sir.
May Allah bless you and your family, and continue to bless you and your family and all the wonderful believers out here with this wonderful platform, brother. Thank you so very much.
Thank you,
brother.
Yes, sir.
It is an honor indeed.
The honor is mine. I can't wait to put this on YouTube this evening. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off for the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.